All right, good evening, everybody. This is Jim Ostrowski, and I work in the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy's Environmental Support Division. I welcome you to our public meeting and hearing tonight. This is to deal with the Eagle submissions proposing boulder revetments in the Dunewood subdivision in Lake Township, Berrien County. I'm glad to see we got quite a few people joining us tonight. Right now, there's about 97 people logged in, and I'm sure we'll get several more logging in as we start to go through some of this housekeeping stuff. So I appreciate you all joining us tonight. It's a beautiful night outside, and thanks for taking some time to make comments. So basically the way it's going to work, and I'll start out first by saying that all your lines are muted at this point, so you can hear us, but we can't hear you. I'll explain how we're going to unmute your lines in just a little bit. Also want to let you know that it's being recorded. So this meeting is being recorded, and you'll be able to access it afterwards. And I'll share that, how to do that later on. So we're going to start out tonight with some basic introductions. We're going to do a little information session. So we're going to have the applicant agent explain the proposed project really briefly. Then we're going to open it up for a little bit for some questions and answers. So we're going to take that up until about 6:30. And then after that, we're going to open it up for the official comment process, which is much more official. So starts out kind of informal. We're going to do presentation and Q&A, and then we're going to move into a more official format. And a lot of you might not have attended virtual public hearings before. You know, it is a little different than a live hearing, I understand. So thanks for bearing with us. Here at Eagle, we've had to do quite a few of them. And, you know, it's different, but, you know, we're doing our best to make sure you get the information you need and you get a chance to comment. And that's what we're here tonight for, is to hear your comments. I want to take a minute here and introduce the Eagle staff who are with me, will be listening in. Ben and Kyle, do you guys want to turn your cameras on and introduce yourselves? All right, we'll start with Ben.
Hi, everybody. Ben Zimont in the Kalamazoo home office right now. Glad you're here.
And Kyle?
Kyle Alexander. I'm with Water Resource Division. I'm the district supervisor in the Kalamazoo district.
All right. And also with us today is Joel Roseberry. And Joel, you say hi there?
Hi, everyone.
Okay, so Joel will be helping me out in the background. He's going to be helping me manage questions as they come in, and he'll be shooting out some information in the chat box for you as well. So you might see his name pop up here and there. I'm going to have Ben, why don't you come on really quick, come back. I'm sorry, I was going to have you come back and
Sure.
kind of explain.
Yep.
This is kind of a unique hearing, so I'll let you quickly explain what's going on with these applications.
Okay. I think a lot of people who are in attendance get it, but to make sure it's clear, I mean, normally when we have an application, people request a public hearing, we have one hearing for that one application. But very, very early on in the process, all of the applications you see listed here, they were all submitted, I think, on the same day, but it was intended to be kind of all of them being concurrently submitted and considered. And because multiple people were asking for the public hearing, actually all of them, it sure didn't make sense for us to have 8 separate public hearings. So this one might seem a little bit, I don't want to say clunky, but more difficult if there are people who have comments on a specific property. Now, when the formal public hearing starts, I will remind people that if their comments are about one particular property, to make sure that they do indicate that, or if it's more generally for all of them. But you see here, they're listed in the order from essentially north to south out there. There is a break between the 6th and the 7th, Brickley and McMenamin. I'm sorry if I butcher that, but anyway, there is a break. There's 6 in a group and then 2 further south, those last 2 that you see on the list. So I hope that's clear, and we'll come back to that during the formal part of the hearing. Okay, Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Just want to make sure that was clear to everybody. And I know there's several people on the phone listening in, and of course you can't see the screen. But when you registered and got the phone number and everything to attend, in that registration, there was a listing of all the different applications that this applies to. So you should be able to see it there. All right, so at this point, what I'm going to do is introduce Eric Nelson. And Mr. Nelson, I'm going to have Joel go ahead and unmute your line. You are here he's from Prism Science Technology, LLC, and he is going to be doing just a quick synopsis of what's going on. And Eric, are you there? Should be able to unmute your line. Are you there?
Can you hear me, Jim?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
All right. So what's going to happen is I got your exhibits here. So as you want me to display them, just tell me and I'll show them. And keep in mind we have a few people on the phone here, so you might have to be descriptive of some of the things you're showing. So go ahead.
Thank you, Jim. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Nelson with Prism Science and Technology in St. Joseph, Michigan. I'm the permitting agent of record for the 8 applicants seeking approval to construct boulder revetments on their properties located in the Dunewood subdivision in Bridgman, Michigan. Taken together, these 8 permit applications are the subject of today's hearing. As agent, I've been involved with each applicant for many months in their painstaking planning and permit application efforts. As proposed, the applicants are either seeking to save their homes from being lost entirely or to guard against the rapidly advancing threat of serious public health concerns should their septic systems become exposed to the environment, to their neighbors, or even to Lake Michigan. In several cases, both the home and their septic system have become threatened. In the past 4 years, the rate of lakeshore erosion in the vicinity of these properties has been accelerating. Exhibit A has been provided to show this remarkable landward advance. Thank you. Exhibit A covers the stretch of shoreline for the northerly group of permit applicants. In order to better understand just how much this stretch of shoreline has changed over the past 4 years, we included some reference points which are called out on the figure as RP1 and RP2. Also shown is the location of the zone of active erosion, labeled in the figure as the wave cut. As you can see, the relative distance between the wave cut and the reference points has narrowed significantly over time along the continuing landward advance of the shoreline edge. The rate of landward advancement for this stretch of shoreline is quite stark with respect to the time interval shown at the bottom of the figure. And for those that can't see this, that timeline starts in mid-October of 2016. There's another shot in late March of 2019, and then one as recently as late September of this year. And in fact, as recently as only 9 days ago, the locations for the reference points were located on what is now the nearshore beach. Another point of interest is the now exposed Cobreak revetment, indicating that the landward migration of erosion at that property has essentially halted since the boulders were exposed, while the remainder of the entire shoreline has continued to erode landward. And that's not due to the Cobreak revetment, I might add. But also of significant note is that the distance between the wave cut and the Helmkamp home is only about 30 feet away as recently as September 29th of this year. Now, Exhibit B shows a similar pattern for the southern group. Thank you. Exhibit B covers a stretch of shoreline for the southerly group of permit applicants. And while looking at the location of reference point RP1 in that figure, it shows a similar dramatic change in shoreline width over the same timeline as shown as Exhibit A. The calculated rates of erosion shown in Exhibits A and B indicate that the erosion rate was between approximately 130% and 250% faster in the past 1.5 years than it was for the previous 2.5-year period. In other words, the average rate of change of erosion for this overall stretch of shoreline was nearly twice as fast in the last 1.5-year period than it was in the previous 2.5-year period. These changes in the shoreline are exactly what the applicants have witnessed day in and day out and what has prompted them to take action. That's all I have on Exhibit B. As required in the permitting process, as it pertains to structures lakeward of the crest of the dune, prior to the submission of permit applications to Eagle, an evaluation of potential alternative to the proposed revetments was undertaken. Alternatives considered included the relocation of homes and/or septic systems, as it applies to each applicant, and was the use of sandbags as potential long-term solutions. Given the significant rate of erosion observed in recent years, the do-nothing alternative was quickly ruled out. As with any feasibility analysis, cost, benefit, and practicality were also considered. In the applicable cases of house relocation, none of the affected applicants have sufficient space on the landward side of their respective properties to satisfy the cost-benefit portion of the analysis. In fact, given the recent high rate of erosion along the lakeshore, moving a house only slightly landward really does nothing to eliminate the underlying threat to the house in the first place. The possibility of house and septic system relocation was examined extensively and included repeated site inspections conducted by myself, staff from the Berrien County Health Department, and staff from Eagle. As an additional layer of review, an outside engineering firm was engaged independently to evaluate potential house or septic relocations as it applies to each applicant. The results of that effort confirmed the previous evaluations. In all manner of feasibility, the standard of comparison must also address equivalency to the existing standard of living to answer the underlying question. As an example, being required to frequently schedule and pay for the pumping, hauling, and off-site disposal of domestic septic at significant cost, or to wash your clothing at a laundromat due to being forced to install an undersized septic system, does not meet the existing standard of living or equivalency requirements of the feasibility analysis. To assume so would then need to factor in the very sizable devaluation of these affected properties in perpetuity, the value difference of which would far exceed the cost of the revetments and again would do nothing to address the underlying threat to the homes itself. The evaluation of feasible alternatives performed in the fall of this year concluded the same things as the initial evaluation conducted prior to submitting the applications to Eagle. The summary of those conclusions included that in each case, a practical difficulty exists, that the circumstances involve human health and safety, and that there are no reasonable or feasible alternatives to that which is being proposed. Now moving on to Exhibit C. Exhibit C depicts a typical cross-section of one of the proposed revetments as one would see it after construction. Regarding revetment design, position, and appearance, in each case, the proposed revetments have been designed in accordance with best engineering practices and current industry standards, including the terminal ends, often referred to as returns or end caps. In addition, each proposed revetment will be constructed entirely on private property in a manner which does not infringe upon the public trust and does not impede the public from traversing the beach, as shown on this figure as the area between the base of the revetment and the water's edge of Lake Michigan at varying water elevations. Access to each property for construction purposes will be via barge from Lake Michigan. In each case, the proposed westward protrusion of the revetments has been minimized by placing the structures as far landward as possible while still avoiding the existing on-site infrastructure. This helps to ensure to the greatest extent practical that the structures avoid interfering with the littoral drift and the natural downwind movement of sand across the beach. Scouring has been addressed by designing the base of the landwardmost edge of the toe stone at or below the low water level of Lake Michigan, with the understanding that even if scouring were to occur, it would very likely be only intermittent and from time to time during severe storm events. In short, what's being proposed isn't some new concept. The proposed revetments consist of the same general design and remain within the same permit parameters as countless other revetments already permitted and constructed in Berrien County and other locations. So again, having worked very closely with each applicant, I just want to say that they are not undertaking this effort without having given extensive thought and research to their potential alternatives to enable them to effectively protect their properties, given the site conditions that they currently face. Nor are they undertaking this effort frivolously and without careful thought and respect for their neighbors, the environment, and surrounding community. Unfortunately, they've been left with no other meaningful choices. But please consider this, that at least in one case, the current threat of shoreline erosion is only about 30 feet from an existing home. To put that into perspective, the distance of 30 feet is only slightly more than what you'd need to safely back your car out of a parking space at the local grocery store. And yes, I've measured that. In closing, we believe that the revetments as proposed meet all applicable state and federal parameters for a permittable project. On behalf of the applicants in this matter, I thank you for your consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Nelson. Just really quick, this Exhibit C, when we put it on the screen here, it doesn't show up very well. I'm sure a lot of people got questions about what they're seeing because you see the words don't really show up. So just to be clear, what we're seeing here in red that I'm circling is what is that?
That's a cross section of the revetment after it's constructed. That's if you could look down at the side of the revetment, that's what would show. That's what you would see from a side view.
Okay, and this distance that we're seeing right here that I'm pointing out right here, what are these distances to Lake Michigan?
Those are the distances to the water's edge at varying lake levels. And I see what you mean about being kind of fuzzy on the screen. The shorter distance is called out as plus or minus 23 feet.
Okay.
And that's based on water levels in June of this year. And then the longer length above it, yep, that's it. It's called out as plus or minus 37 feet, and that was in June of 2018.
Okay, thank you. All right, so right now we got a little bit of time to ask and answer some questions. So I'll have Ben and Kyle, if you guys want to come back on. And what we'll do is if you have a question, and we're going to try to take questions up to about 6:30 before we go to the official hearing. Because remember, in the official hearing, we don't do questions and answers. You just make your comments. So if you do have a question, now's the time to answer. We can do our best to answer your question. You can type your question into the Q&A box that you have on your Zoom toolbar. If you move your mouse, you'll see a Zoom toolbar show up and hit Q&A. You can type your question in and I'll read it. Or if you'd like, you can click the raise hand icon on your Zoom toolbar and I'll see your hand is raised and I'll call on you and Joe will unmute you. If you're on the phone, I know we have a lot of call-in people. If you're on the phone, you want to answer a question, just hit *9. So if you hit *9, it'll show us your hand is raised and we will call you by your phone number because we can't see your name. So, all right. Okay, so let's take a look, take some questions here. The first question that came in, someone's asking, where would the water level show as of now? So I'm going to have Ben or Kyle with Eagle. Did you guys, either of you know that right now?
Jim, I would ask you to put that cross section back up and then have Eric answer that.
Okay, so Eric, you want to take that? Where would the level show now?
Right now, it would be based on current water elevation, somewhere between the distance of the 37 feet and the 23 feet. So somewhere between
somewhere near
outer bars. Correct.
Okay.
So for those who cannot read those just because it's pixelated, I'm just going to add that. So that higher water level, the lighter blue, I've got a printed copy here, is labeled as 582.2 feet. And we always reference the reference datum as IGLD 1985. So that's where it was in June of 2020 at 582.2. Right now, Lake Michigan is 581.7 to 9. It varies daily, but it's in that range of 581.7 to 581.9.
Okay, thanks. Another person here is asking, when were these homes built? Do any of you know that? Is that? Something anybody knows?
I'll let Eric try again on that too.
Okay, go ahead, Eric.
Ken.
Well, I'm not really prepared for that particular statistic, but if memory serves, I believe those homes range between around 1950 to early 2000s. Now, the applicants can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
All right. So I'm going to go to the hands raised now. We got a couple hands raised. So Joel, can you unmute Michael Callahan? Michael Callahan, your line's unmuted. You could just click the unmute and go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you very much for this hearing. By the way, you guys are doing a wonderful job. Looking at the graph, how much would the level of the lake even have to raise to get to the revetments, much less the homes over the history? It seems like it would have to rise a fairly sizable to even get to a problematic point. I know it's unpredictable, but it seems like the lake is going down, not going up, looking at the history.
Yeah, Ben, is that something you want to answer, or you have Eric?
I think what I'm going to keep, if it's kind of a procedural
Okay.
and understanding the law type of thing, I'll go with that. But otherwise, I'm going to keep deferring to Eric. Okay. I mean, I can join in if I think it'll help. But Eric,
Okay.
do you want to try again?
Yeah, go ahead, Eric. Sorry about that. Yep.
Sure. Really, what's been occurring out there is not just the elevated lake levels. It's when certain storm events occur that cause significant storm surge to rise up the beach and actually impact the lakeward face of the dune as we all know it to be currently, which is pretty much just a vertical face. And that is the forces that are acting to erode the face of that bluff.
Okay. Going to hands raised again, I got next one, John Froberg. Can you unmute John Froberg? Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to refer to Eric's first set of exhibits showing the aerial views of the properties in question. And as you can see in Exhibit A, where it points at the Helmkamp residence, the wave cut from the 1986 level is right at about 30 feet from his home, which is where the lake is eroded back to now, since it's been back up near or around the 1986 level. That home was built in 2015, and when I saw them excavate and put the foundation in there, I said, oh my God, what are they thinking? They are building this home 30 feet away from where the lake could rise to again, which it has. So it's nothing new. The rest of the wave cuts along the existing, which you can see in this picture in Exhibit A, has come near or not quite to that old wave cut from the 80s. And as of today, the lake has gone down 6 or 7 inches in the last 30 days, as seen on the most recent water level from the Army Corps of Engineers here, and is forecast to be down more than a foot by the end of October from the 1986 level. And being here all
Mr.
my
Froberg,
life...
Do you have a
Mr.
question?
Froberg,
I'm
can
sorry.
Yeah, I want to interrupt you. What we're doing here is making sure in this informational session is that people understand what's being proposed and maybe how things were designed, and then also the legal process. And I think what you're doing is valuable, but we need to save that for your actual public comment that you'll either do during the public comment period or in writing. And so what I want to do is, unless you do have a kind of a clarification question, let other people who raise their hands or are otherwise presenting questions to us go to them.
Yes, that's all I had to say about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Thanks for clarifying that for us too, Ben. Just want to make sure people know that right now we're just trying to get through some basic questions people might have about this, and then we'll go to the comment after we're done with that. So looking at my question board here, we have a person that asked, you mentioned some boulders were recently exposed, but they are not causing the rapid deterioration. How do you know this? It seems this just reinforces the fact that revetments cause more damage. So, Mr. Nelson, you want to address that one?
Could you restate that question?
Sure.
It seems there's a couple of different components to that.
Yeah, this person's saying that you mentioned during your presentation that you mentioned some boulders were recently exposed, but they are not causing the rapid deterioration. How do you know this? And they're saying it seems this just reinforces the fact that revetments cause more damage.
Well, the boulders that I was referring to are located at the Colebreak property on the northern end of the northern group. And, you know, one small section of rock revetment such as that relative to the very, very significant length of the rest of the lakeshore, whether it be up to the north or much further down to the south, you know, as it continues to experience erosion at relatively the same rates that I was talking about earlier for this stretch of shoreline. You know, a single revetment does not cause that drastic type of erosion along that length of shoreline anywhere that I've ever seen.
Okay. Another question here. This person's asking what scientific literature supports your claims that the scouring and destruction will only be mild, intermittent, and not impactful to the beach?
I never said that it was mild or would not impact the beach. What I was referring to was the elevation of where the lakeward most extent of the revetments would be placed vertically, which is at or below the low level of Lake Michigan. So in and by themselves, scouring is not an issue unless the toe of the proposed revetments were, you know, if we were proposing to place them in the water or 5 or 10 or even up 15 feet lakeward of the ordinary high water mark, then the effects of scouring can certainly increase. But we're not showing that where these particular revetments are proposed to be located along the wave cut.
Okay. We got a few questions here regarding the structure that the revetments, I guess, that you had discussed. I'm going to bring back that picture up here. One person's asking, what is the height and length of the proposed revetments? And then another person is asking, where is the cross section taken?
Exhibit C shows a generalized cross section. It's a typical cross section of what you could expect to see at any given location. It's not site specific. As far as the height and the length of the face, I think that's what was being asked. Those are on the plan work that were submitted along with the applications to Eagle.
Okay. Where on this diagram is the steel structure?
So let me jump in, Eric, and help you on that. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that laterally, just the horizontal distance, not so much diagonal, and so there's a difference, is that, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, that these are proposed as being 30 feet wide. So if it was just the horizontal distance from the top to the toe, 30 feet wide, and cumulatively, Colebreak, which already has some stone, and then the other 7 is in the high 800s of linear feet when you accumulate, the cumulative number of those. So is that right, Eric, that they're 30 feet wide proposed?
That's correct as constructed. However, the significant portion of that 30 feet is actually below the beach, below ground level after it's constructed. So you don't even see that portion of it. That, the entire portion of the toe stone and the armor stone that is immediately landward from that is actually below grade. So the the length or the width rather of what is actually exposed after construction is much less than 30 feet.
All right, and then the question about where is the steel structure? Is that applicable to this, or?
I don't think so.
We're not
I don't know.
proposing any steel structure.
I don't,
Okay.
yeah, I don't either.
Okay. Another person is asking, what type of damage will the construction cause, particularly to the sandbar? We live down-drift of these proposed applications. If approved, how can you guarantee that my home will not be directly affected?
Well, working with the people that operate these barges, they deal with sandbars on every single project. And I'm told that, they know how to get their barges over or around these sandbars. I'm not a barge expert, but those that I have spoken with assure me that, for the projects that they've worked on historically, they have not had any issue with that whatsoever.
Okay, we're going to take a few more questions because we're getting a lot of them in here. A few people have asked about, looking at alternatives, if any alternatives were considered, specifically geotubes.
Geotubes were considered as an alternative to a more hardened revetment, but geotubes tend to be very temporary in their nature. They will not hold up to the severe forces of Lake Michigan, given a severe storm event. Not very long anyway.
Okay. Okay, going back to my hands raised here. It looks like we got Arthur Hahn. Arthur, we just unmuted your mic, so you can go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. I wanted to stay with this last question, really. Could you give us more detail? You said you thoroughly considered the alternatives and the sandbags. If the lake seems to be declining, as the Corps of Engineers says, tell us what you really looked at in terms of geotubes and sandbags as a solution at this point. You didn't give us good detail of how you considered it, what your measurements are, what the basis is.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Go ahead, Eric.
Firstly, a direct comparison to stone revetments and sandbags or geotubes really can't be conducted because it's apples and oranges entirely. One is designed to be permanent. The other, such as geotubes or sandbags, are designed to be very temporary. So it's really an apples and oranges comparison. It's not a direct comparison.
All right, thanks. Another person's got their hand up. Tom Missener. Tom Missener. You can go ahead, sir.
Hi, this is Sarah Meisner.
Oh, okay.
Question, the homeowners who are working to place revetments, will they have access to the beach front in front of their homes once these revetments are placed? And if so, what does that look like?
Thank you. Go ahead, Eric.
Yes, they will have their own stairways over the top of their stone revetments. Stairways like they had previously. They may be wood, they may be steel. It depends on what they want to build on top of those revetments. But in keeping with critical dune requirements, those stairways can be no greater than 5 feet in width. So they would be no greater than what was there previously.
All right, thanks. I got a few questions about erosion issues. This person here is asking, says Eric stated the current Cobreak revetment did not cause increased erosion on the property to the south. The exhibit looks as though there is increased erosion. How can we be sure these new revetments will not cause downdrift damage to other properties?
Well, I can't speak to the forces of Lake Michigan, especially with respect to any unprotected or vulnerable properties.
Okay. I guess we'll leave that one like that. And Ben, maybe you can help address this one. This person's asking, do any of the houses within the applicants have Eagle permits when the houses were built that require the house to be a movable house? The house was permitted as a readily movable structure. Why wouldn't the structure house be moved before resorting to a revetment?
I've covered Berrien County since 2012, and I'm not, I know that there's some permit history on some of the other ones, and I've got it on record. I just don't have it right before me. In terms of actual new construction of a house, at least since 2012, the only one is Helm Camp, which somebody already referred to that being built, I think 2015, maybe 2016, or around there. So yeah, at the time that that house was built, it did meet the 30-year setback under high risk erosion, which meant it had to be constructed in a manner that it could be readily movable. I will say that while that law does require that it has to be constructed to be readily movable, I can't say as we stand whatever here today that we have the authority to make somebody move it. It just has to be constructed so that it can be more readily movable. Okay. Hope that answers the question. The other, I guess, 6 houses, I don't know. I can't answer that right now.
All right, we're just gonna take a couple more questions before we have to move to the public hearing. And I know there's a lot of questions coming in here. This one here relates to the health department. Did the owners have their properties evaluated by the health department to determine if landward areas exist to relocate septic systems?
Yes, they did.
Okay, because they're saying you heard mention of only enough area for undersized systems, which would not allow the use of laundry. Is there a report that specifies the types of systems considered? So. I don't know if you want to address any more of that regarding the septic system.
That was part of the feasibility analysis.
Okay. I think right here, Ben, maybe you know this one. Are the engineering studies and health department evaluations referred to posted at the MyWater site?
So the way, a little bit of education, the way MyWaters works. If the applicant, in this case, Prism is their agent, if they make revisions directly into MyWaters, then those are always going to be, within, I don't know if there's a cycle it updates on the hour or at least every several hours. So if the applicant, their agent, if they made a revision which included more new documents, then those will be readily observable to people. Other things that come in as emails or even US mail to our office, to me, then I have to take the action of, I'll say, manually uploading those into each of the MyWater's records. There's quite a bit that I need to do on that, including all of the public comments that I've received via email only. So yeah, it's a split answer. I have some more documents that need to be uploaded that have been provided to me, and I guess I'll just commit that those will all be done by the end of the week, 2 days.
Okay, thanks, Ben. And just to let everybody know that if you click on the chat button on your toolbar, Joel did send out links, direct links to the documents we have in MyWaters. And for those of you who don't know, MyWaters is like the database system that our Water Resources Division uses to house all the permit applications and permits, and all sorts of other information. So that's what we call it, MyWaters. So if you look in the chat, you can click on the direct link. It takes you right to that specific application, the documents that we have available for that. I'm going to group these two questions into one, then maybe we probably have to start moving on. How long will it take to build the 8 revetments, and who's in charge of maintenance?
Well, schedule-wise, because the access is proposed via barge, we'll likely have to wait until sometime next spring. We are rapidly approaching the time when barges really can't operate in Lake Michigan. Barges and high waves just don't play well together. So construction will probably commence in the spring. How long it takes once that begins is to be determined. As far as any maintenance is concerned, these revetments are each owned by the individual property owners. So it is up to them to maintain them.
All right, and one last question. Will we be able to walk in the water if some of the 30 feet of width is underwater? It sounds like we won't be able to walk on the shoreline or in the water because of the 30 feet of hard armoring.
Well, again, I can't speak to what Lake Michigan may or may not do in terms of elevation or to the forces of the storms coming there from. So I can't begin to guess at that.
Okay. All right. So Ben, I think you can see we've got a lot of questions that have come in. Unfortunately, we got to move on to the official hearing portion of our evening. I will let everybody know that we are documenting these questions, and I'll have a report that I will share with Ben and Kyle so they can take a look at them and I guess get back to you or whatever later. Ben, I don't know if you had any comments on that or if you wanted to address anyway.
Well, there's not necessarily a real direct mechanism for us to respond to the comments we get here in this informational session. But I mean, you've got my email up there, so people are free to email those questions to me. Some of them are just going to be taken as things that we use in our evaluation that will be questions we might then pass on to the applicants through PRISM. And others, I guess I'll just say I'll do my best to try to, especially if it's helping you to understand our process, to answer your emails or things like that. And I'll apologize ahead of time for the delays you might have with that, but I think you understand.
All right, thanks, Ben. And thank you, Eric Nelson, for being on and presenting and answering questions. Thank you guys for everybody for putting in their questions. I know a lot of them came in tonight, so but we do want to leave plenty of time to take comment, and there are quite a few people who have already indicated they want to make an official comment, so we want to make sure we have plenty of time for that tonight. So what we're going to do now is we actually have to move into the official comment portion of the evening. Before I have Ben read off the official statement, I'm bringing up a slide here. You can see this. This is different ways to make a comment. So if you don't feel comfortable making a comment tonight, you can submit a comment by mail or in MyWater system or by email. And I'll be reading those off again, especially for those on the phone that can't see the screen, of course. I'll read them off at the end tonight. I will read off Brian's email or Ben's email. It's Zimont, ZIMONT, B as in Ben, at michigan.gov. So that's his email. MyWaters, what we're going to actually do is after this meeting, we've got your emails because you're registered and signed up. We'll follow up with an email that'll provide direct links on how to comment directly into the system, to provide written comments for any of these applications, because it'd be kind of difficult to explain how to do that on a slide here. So we're just going to send you all a direct email after this meeting. So if you do want to submit written comments, you can do so. All right. So, Ben, are you good with reading the statement now?
I'm ready. Yep,
Okay, so
sure.
let's move into the official hearing. So Ben, go ahead and read the official hearing statement for tonight.
If any of you have been to a Water Resources Division public hearing before, you understand that we've got this standard that takes about 10 minutes to read kind of what we're required to, both legally and also to make sure that people kind of understand the. So bear with me for about 10 minutes here. So again, my name is Ben Zimont, and I'm in the Water Resources Division of the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, we're known as EGLE. And I'll be serving as the hearings officer at tonight's public hearing. There's a couple other EGLE staff, Water Resources staff, who are at least in attendance. You already, if you were on for the informal session, Kyle Alexander. There's some others, including Kate Letterly and Zach Chamberlain. So to describe how this is going to work tonight, I'll begin with some background information about why we're here, and I'll describe the purpose of the hearing and how your comments will be used. Following that, I'll outline the procedures under which we'll take your comments and then describe what will happen after tonight's hearing. It'll be then time for you to provide your comments, and we'll spend the majority of the time tonight from here on out listening to those comments. And at the end, I'll provide a short summary and closing. So by way of background, the Water Resources Division is responsible for administering a variety of statutes and programs that help protect inland lakes and streams, wetlands, floodplains, sand dunes, Great Lakes. These programs regulate certain activities such as dredging or filling in a lake or a stream or a wetland, constructing a dam, constructing marinas, placing shore protection, again on an inland lake or Great Lakes, constructing docks, building in critical dune areas, building in wetlands, floodplains, that kind of a thing. So the overall law that governs those is called the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act. It's Public Act 451 of 1994 as amended. It is pretty much all of the natural resources, what used to be standalone statutes that are all put into one big law that was combined in 1994. And all those former statutes have a capital P part to start with, and you'll hear me refer to part 353 and dune statute, critical dune statute. So we're here tonight because EGLE has received requests for a public hearing on this group of 8 applications for similar activities. Generally, they propose construction of new or repair and improvement of boulder revetments along the shoreline of Lake Michigan within the critical dunes area. Because of the similar conditions and similar proposed activities, rather than holding 8 separate hearings, EGLE is holding just this one hearing. And for the record, I'm just going to read the 8 applicants' last name and their street address. Excuse me again. All these are in Lake Township with a mailing address of Bridgman. So the 8 applications and their street address, or the applicant names and their street address are, and I'm working from north to south. Yeah, they're good. Okay, for those of you who can see and they're not on the phone, they're listed, they're shown on the screen here. Cobreak at 5058 Ironwood Lane, Helmkamp at 9060 Lakeway Lane, Gates at 9076 Lakeway Lane, Mayers at 9092 Lakeway Lane, Burke at 9106. There's some confusion of whether or not Burke is Lakeway Lane or if it's Lake Street. Brickley, 9118 Lakeway Lane. Sorry about this, McMenamin and Mulvihill, I think I got that right, at 5122 Dogwood Lane, and Allen at 5115 Dogwood Lane. And again, they're all Bridgman appeal. The public hearing is the next part I'm going to read here. So in order for a permit to be granted, find that the proposed activities described in our public notice and in the applications meet certain criteria set forth by Part 353, which is sand dunes protection of that Act 451. As a point of clarification, given the site conditions and the proposed activities, I think it's good to point out the Eagle does not have authority under the Great Lakes Submerged Lands Act, which we call Part 325 sometimes. We don't, it's all landward and above authority under the Great Lakes statute. So under the Sand Dunes statute, when reviewing an application for a permit under Part 353, Sand Dune and Management, Eagle is charged to make the following considerations. And I'm going to quote, just read verbatim one section of the law. Section 353.041A says, subject to Section 353.16, a permit shall be approved unless the local unit of government or the department determines that the use will significantly damage the public interest on the privately owned land, or if the land is publicly owned, the public interest on the publicly owned land by significant and unreasonable depletion or degradation of any of the following. One, the diversity of the critical dune areas within the local unit of government. Two, the quality of the critical dune areas within the local unit of government. And three, the functions of the critical dune areas within the local unit of government. And I want to go on and say, however, when a special exception approval is required, which is the case with these, then a second section of the statute applies, and that's 353.17, subsection 1. And that section, it's a really long one to read, and you need to read it multiple times to get it. So I'm going to say that that section reads similarly to what I just did read, but it does include language relative to practical difficulty and assuring human health and safety. So the purpose of tonight's hearing is to give anyone interested in these applications an opportunity to provide information that Eagle can use in making the decision on whether or not to issue a permit. Please recognize that Eagle can only use the information that you provide if it relates to the criteria that we must use in making a decision. Some of you may simply want to express your support or your opposition to the project, and we'd be happy to make a note of that position. But please understand that we're required by law to base our decision on whether or not, but please understand we're not allowed to base our decision on whether or not there's widespread support or opposition to the project. I need to mention that this hearing was was published in the Herald Palladium September 19th. And so here's the procedures for taking your public comments. To ensure that the hearing is conducted in a fair manner, we'll follow these steps. First, we're going to call on the names of those who've indicated that they want to make a statement when they registered. We'll call you in the order that you registered. So we've got that here. We've got the actual right down to the second that you submitted your registration. And remember that we can only use the information you provide if it relates to the criteria we use in making a decision. If you have questions and if there's time at the end, depending on which is more appropriate, we will either allow the applicant again to respond, or Eagle will respond, kind of like what we did here at the beginning. And another point to make, because of the fact that there's technically 8 different applications being considered tonight as part of this hearing, when you do make your comment, please clarify if it's directed at one particular property or if it's more generally for all of them. So secondly, then we're going to call on those who have either registered and indicated that they want to make a statement after, say, I think we made our list of those who wanted to talk at about 2 o'clock today. So if you didn't make it before then, you'll need to raise your hand or type it somehow through the comment box here that you do wish to comment. So if you have written comments you would like to submit, please, again, we've shown you my contact information. Either email them to me or upload them to MyWaters or even the US mail there at the Adobe Road address. When all of the comments have been completed, again, if there's time, we may give an opportunity for others to make a statement. When your name is called, microphone, I'm sorry, This is still remnants of the old way, in-person one. Your microphone will be unmuted. And as you begin your comments, state if you are representing a group or just if you do represent a group, what group that is. Because of the large number of people wanting to make a comment tonight, we're going to limit the comments to 3 minutes. And when you have about 30 seconds left, you'll be given a warning. And so begin wrapping up your comments and do your best to end within the allotted time. I just ask that everybody is respectful to each other tonight. Recognize that Eagle staff are here tonight to provide a fair opportunity to express your comments on the proposed projects. As Jim had said earlier, this hearing is being recorded and your comments will be part of the information Eagle uses to consider making its decision on whether or not to issue permits on the proposed projects. The public comment period for this public hearing is open for another 10 days from the date of this hearing, ending on October 17th. Additional information and comments submitted in writing during the 10-day public comment period will be considered. Following the close of the public comment period, Eagle will continue to evaluate the applications in order to make a decision on whether or not to issue a permit for the projects as proposed, issue a permit with modifications, or deny the applications. And remember, these are eight separate applications. You may find out what the decision is by checking on our MyWaters website, or I suppose emailing or calling me. Thank you for your attention. I'll now begin calling the names of those who have indicated they want to make a statement, unless Jim has more instructions to make.
Yeah,
Or maybe Jim, are you going to call the names?
Yeah. Thanks, Ben. I'll actually just call names. I got them right here. And so I just want to remind people, we got a list here of people that registered as of about 2 o'clock or so, because we had to pull it. We're going to start going down that list when I call your name, and I'm going to call the person that's on deck as well, because we got a lot of people that want to comment. So just be ready. Joel will unmute your mic. He's going to first check to make sure that person is in attendance, and if they're not in attendance, he'll let me know. If they are, we'll let you know your mic's unmuted, and remember you have 3 minutes. I'll actually probably give you a little warning at about 1 minute so you can start wrapping up, and then I'll let you know at 3 minutes. And if you would, please wrap up, because we've got a lot of people that want to make comments tonight. I think we have 22 people already on this list here. And then afterwards, if you want to make a comment, you can just raise your hand, of course, or if you're on the phone, you can click *9 to make a comment. And I'll remind you of that in just a moment. Like Ben said, here's the list of applications we're talking about. If you can refer to a specific one, go ahead, or you can just, if it refers to all of them, you can indicate that as well. All right, so I'm gonna start with our first name on my list here, and I'll tell you who's on deck as well. So the first name on my list is Bill Gates, and after Bill Gates is John Royce. So Joel, do we see, is there a Bill Gates? And there he is. So sir, you can unmute your line. Mr. Bill Gates. You should see something pop up on your screen that says you can unmute yourself, or there'll be a little microphone that allow you to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay.
So go
All
ahead.
right. Thank you. I appreciate your allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Bill Gates, and I live at 9076 Lakeway Lane in Bridgman. Our home is on the lake, and my parents bought the cottage in 1965, and we've had 4 generations of our family since then that have enjoyed the cottage. We're known as a family who is always on the beach. We love the beach. We love the beauty of Lake Michigan. When our property was deeded in 1958, Lake Michigan was 352 feet from the east property line. Today, the Lake Michigan is now just 170 feet from the east property line, or half of what it used to be. In 2007, Eagle designated our property as a high-risk erosion area, and we have watched the beach diminish, especially since 2013. Our home is now less than 60 feet from the high dune that continues to erode. We've lost 40 to 50 feet of grassy foredunes since the summer of 2019. The long foot burning walk to the beach we used to have through the sand and dune grass has disappeared. And if that rate of erosion continues, we'll lose our house this winter. We are in deep trouble. As you know, Lake Michigan is still 33 inches above the September average level, and the short-term forecast calls for not much relief from these high levels. The shoreline from Dunewood to the Cook Power Plant looks like a war zone with the fallen trees that erosion has caused. You can no longer walk the beach from Dunewood northeastment to the Cook plant. All summer long, we've been watching sand cascade down the dunes and trees falling into the lake, especially on the many days, and some recent, that we've had high winds and waves. And that was in summer. What will it be like in October and through next May when the winter storms hit? That's why we're asking Eagle to grant us a permit for a rock revetment to control the erosion and save our property. On your own website, you emphasize that sandbags are not a permanent solution to erosion problems.
Get 1 minute.
In submitting this request for a permit, we have done everything Eagle has asked us to do. We have a professional engineer, we have a professional contractor who's done many revetments in the area. We have designed a plan, which you've seen, which complies with Eagle's requirements, including leaving room for people to walk the beach. We're not asking for anything that hasn't already been done. Eagle's issued, according to their website, 730 shoreline protection permits in the last fiscal year. And we've spent hours, as Eric mentioned, researching methods of erosion control, getting proposals from vendors, webinars. We even hired an independent third-party engineering firm who, in a written statement, advised us that it would not be practical to relocate the septic system or the home. So we've done our homework, and we're in deep trouble. And with the prospect of 6 more months of winter winds eating more of our shoreline away, our situation is precarious and needs immediate attention. Please help us by approving this application for permit. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Okay, next person we have on my list is John Royce. Then after that, it's Don Kobrick. Mr. Royce, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I'm John Royce. We're at 9326 Lakeview, and we are just a few properties south of the proposed revetments. I just want to preface my comments, first of all, by saying that I believe the applicants, Eagle, and all those that are even opposed to the revetments have 3 things in common. First of all, we love the area. Second of all, we understand the need to protect the properties. And third, we have a responsibility as stewards of here that we need to protect the natural beauty and the health of our environment here, not only for ourselves, but for future generations. Our big concern right now is we don't understand what the downdrift implications of these revetments are. I know there's been comments that the Kobrick revetment didn't cause any downdrift damage, but when you're looking that way, it certainly looks as though it did. And we're very concerned that, you know, a few revetments start now, where does it end? We'd have to have some revetments. Our neighbors to the south would have to have revetments. And where does this end? At Waco Beach? There'd be some real concerns there in terms of the public enjoyment, the fiscal health of Bridgman. So just very concerned about the whole downdrift properties and the Eagle's own webinars that I've attended, as well as research from Dr. Guy Meadows, Dr. Norton. They've all brought this up. And I don't feel as though this has been addressed fully yet from a lot of the things that we've heard. So I would just hope that at this point, for now, Eagle not approve these revetments, and we get a chance to see, maybe we can do something less draconian right now. Perhaps there's some shorter term sandbag geotubes that would get the people, you know, at least safe through the winter, the upcoming storms. But I'm kind of a data junkie and look constantly at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer data. And I know last week, for the first time, the lake levels are no longer rising from a year ago. So, you know, we don't know if that's a long-term trend or whether that's going to continue or not. But to me, I think it really bears meting out that we hold off on this see what the lake levels are going to do before we do
1 minute.
something that is just so drastic and will really affect the whole natural beauty of this. And again, I just want to, hope that Eagle is really looking at their job as stewards for the lake and the environment and looking at the long-term effect of how this may affect our individual properties, the public trust, as well as the public beach of Waco. Thanks. Appreciate the chance to make some comments tonight.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next person on my list is Don Kobrick, and then after Don Kobrick is John Froberg. Don Kobrick, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
My name's Dawn Kobrick, and I live at 5058 Ironwood Lane in Bridgman. And my father installed a revetment in 1998. And I would like to clear up some misinformation circulating regarding our revetment and point out that the errors of supposed experts that the protesters are relying upon. On May 15, 2020, a woman and her husband from Dunewood conducted an interview about revetments with Dr. Richard Norton, a professor of urban and regional planning in the University of Michigan Taubman College of Agricultural and Urban Planning. He quoted Dr. Guy Meadows, a professor of sustainable marine engineering. The couple recorded, transcribed, and shared this transcript of the interview with all the Dunewood residents. The woman asked Dr. Norton about the revetment my father installed. She showed him a picture of our rock revetment. Dr. Norton responded, quote, "Those rocks in the picture, is that what you were referring to as a revetment that was put in before? What that's showing is a ton of stuff that was thrown over the shore in the 80s. But the thing to note too is the fact that how quickly that became uncovered again, and the lakes came back up. I'm sure it wasn't covered that quickly. It took a long time for the sand to build back up over it." Not one thing that he said here is accurate. Our attorney, Ruth Skidmore, has submitted a date stamp picture to Eagle. This picture shows that 90% of the rocks were naturally covered by sand within 1 year of the installation. I don't think that's a long time. The woman then asked Dr. Norton, "Is that a sloping revetment?" Dr. Norton responded, quote, "No, that's just a pile of rocks. So the pile is not very effective and it's probably going to get washed into the lake," unquote. None of what he said is accurate. The revetment was professionally installed in 1998. It is absolutely a sloped rock revetment. It's not just a pile of rocks thrown over the shore, as stated by Dr. Norton. My father requested and received all the necessary permits. I have all the drawing and permits that were issued and that are stamped with DEQ approval. I cannot believe my eyes and ears when I hear Dr. Norton and Dr. Meadows. They have not looked at Dunewood. They have not looked at our property. How can they be so cavalier as to offer their opinions as supposed experts when they have not seen the property in question, the drawings, or talked to me about it? I think this exchange shows that every lake home faces a unique challenge, and you are personally familiar with the property. It is not helpful or appropriate to offer uneducated opinions about the matter. I ask you to disregard opinions of people who have failed to study the specifics. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next person, John Froberg, and after John Froberg is Ruth Skidmore. So John Froberg, you're unmuted, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, my name is John Froberg. I live at 9176 Hemlock Lane. My property lies 105 feet south of the 6 proposed revetments to the north of Dunewood. We ask you as members of Eagle to protect the owners of adjacent properties to the proposed revetments and decline the permits in today's hearing. Where is my protection? Who is looking out for me and my property in the certain event of the revetment's failure? Where is my property's protection? During the certain disturbance due to the installation, where is my protection? After the revetments are installed and begin to negatively affect the adjacent properties, where is my protection? Who is going to guarantee there will be no negative impact to adjacent properties? Mr. Nelson and his group of experts. Is the state's responsibility to protect my property from the actions of my neighbors doing irreparable harm to my property? Eagle's mission statement is about protecting, not altering, the dunes. Importing rocks and boulders from another state is not indigenous to the sandy eastern shore of Lake Michigan, permanently changing the structure of the shoreline and blocking the public trust. Experts with a vested interest in the outcome cannot be trusted to give objective testimony. There is a clear conflict of interest. It is called the profit motive. Listen to the experts with nothing to gain. They have the clear voice without a conflict of interest. Their voice is one of caution. Revetments cause irreparable, permanent harm to adjacent properties and ultimately will fail 100% of the time. Every revetment that's been installed is in the water. There is no beach to walk down in front of them.
1 minute.
We ask you as members of Eagle to protect the owners of adjacent properties and the public trust. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Next person requesting to make comment, Ruth Skidmore. And after Ruth Skidmore is Ellen Regan. Ruth Skidmore, you're unmuted, so you can go ahead and make your comment.
Thank you. I serve as legal counsel to the homeowners whose applications are currently under review. Thank you for allowing me to speak on their behalf. Eagle is asked to ascertain whether these applicants face a practical difficulty in protecting their property as necessary in the interest of health and safety, and whether these proposed structures will substantially or unreasonably harm the public interest. The record submitted to Eagle to date demonstrates that each of these applicants is experiencing catastrophic erosion and face imminent risk of uninsured loss of their property structures, thereby demonstrating quite clearly that health and safety is implicated. Faced with that potential loss, the applicants have secured expert guidance, have fully assessed their options, and identified the only feasible means of protecting their very substantial investment in the Lake Michigan shoreline, while also minimizing any impact on their ability to freely access and enjoy that shoreline, interests that they share with the public at large. While members of the general public have hypothesized that sewer and home structures can simply be moved further back, these suggestions are unsupported by any expert assessment in the record specific to these sites and otherwise rely on hearsay. In fact, the applicants themselves explored and secured a professional assessment, and that professional assessment concluded that movement of structures is not a feasible alternative in light of the site limitations and zoning requirements. Accordingly, they settled upon the natural stone revetment structures that are depicted in the engineered drawings, a form of revetment we would note that has been approved by this agency in hundreds of prior applications. These proposed revetments are situated sufficiently landward so as to ensure continuing access along the water's edge, even in times of high water, and the engineered drawings that were submitted to Eagle support that observation. Everyone's interests are aligned on that point, and all of these interests are respected in the design that was submitted by the applicants. The concerns for scouring impacts on the adjacent properties are also addressed. This structure helps minimize scouring at the base and along its edges by virtue of its angled structure as compared to vertical steel alternatives. And the natural stone material is designed to capture sand over time and allow for the restoration of natural flora. And to that point, again, I would direct you to Exhibit E in my correspondence of October 5th, which shows the Cobreak property naturalized 1 year after the installation of their stone revetment. I would also reference Exhibit A of the public slides, by which it's readily observable that Lake Michigan is what has caused erosion along that entire expanse, irrespective of a site's location in relation to the Cobreak revetment. None of the objectors have offered expert support for impacts specific to these structures at this location. These are generic objections that are equally applicable to every erosion control structure that's been permitted to date. And as such, we would ask that they be given no special weight in the context of these applications.
3 minutes.
We implore Eagle to stick what has been established by the professional assessments and to issue the permits for the protection of this property.
Okay, thank you. That's 3 minutes. Okay, the next person that's up is Ellen Regan, and after Ellen Regan is Eugene Schoon. Ellen Regan, you are unmuted, so you can go ahead and make your comment.
Hi, thank you for taking public comments before you make this critically important decision. I'm Ellen Reagan, and I live in the Dunewood Association in Bridgman. My husband grew up on Lake Erie and watched the beach he combed as a boy lost to the sort of shoreline stabilization efforts that have increased nearly 250% in Michigan this year. We know more now than we knew back then, and it is our hope that EGLE will listen to the science and insist on alternatives to hard stabilization before Michigan takes over Ohio's dubious distinction of being the most armored shoreline in the Great Lakes. Under EGLE funding, Dr. Guy Meadows, founding director of the Great Lakes Research Center at Michigan Tech, developed an 80-year look at the entire Lake Michigan shoreline. He has explained both in the EGLE High Water Virtual Town Hall in April and in testimony to the Michigan House Committee on Natural Resources and Outdoor Recreation in February, how the Great Lakes are widening out at a historic rate of about a foot a year, independent of the impacts of high water we are experiencing now. According to Professor Meadows, that geological phenomenon, called background erosion, represents a transfer of sediment from the dunes to the near shore that is a process that must be protected because the beach's continued survival depends on it. Trying to halt this background erosion with shoreline protection structures kills beaches over time because it robs them of the material they need to rebuild. Even if a proposed project is above the original high water mark when built, the reality of background erosion, as well as cyclical periods of high lake levels, will ensure that the structure will eventually be in the water, causing downdrift damage and scouring. When the beach in front of these structures is eliminated, the gradual transition from shallow water to upland is destroyed, disturbing shoreline habitats, disrupting the natural ecosystem, and degrading biodiversity. In his testimony to the Michigan House, Dr. Meadows described how the beach survives. When high waves strike the shoreline, sand from the above water portions of the beach is moved offshore and stored in the sandbars.
1 minute.
The purpose of sandbars, he said, is to trip those big waves that are coming in the fall storms and have them break offshore. But shoreline stabilization structures reduce the sand supply that builds the sandbars. The sand that would normally be traveling down the shore and nourishing beaches is not available in the same volume it was before shore stabilization. Revetments, he testified, cause increased turbulence in the nearshore zone and drive the sandbars further offshore than they would be under natural conditions. This is not hysteria, it is science. A 3-year NOAA-funded study in Cape Cod proved in 2018 that revetments prevent the upland from being a sediment source to the system, thereby reducing the longshore transport that rebuilds beaches. It also concluded that revetments redirect wave energy and erosion, negatively impacting adjacent properties. A 6-year field study on the impact of erosion in Wisconsin, conducted by Professor Wu in the University of Wisconsin-Madison's Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, and published in the Journal of Great Lakes Research, similarly concluded that the presence of shoreline structures originally designed to protect shoreline bluffs can cause additional bluff failures outside the protected shoreline.
Ma'am, that's 3 minutes. Can you wrap up, please?
Given the increasing and massive number of shoreline stabilization projects that EGLE is permitting, the loss of the sand supply needed to maintain beaches is becoming increasingly worrisome. If this pattern continues, the cumulative impact of these projects will prevent the beach from coming back and bearing revetments, as the builder's consultant asserts.
Okay, sorry, that's over 3 minutes now. We're going to have to end your comment at this point, ma'am. So, and I just want to remind people that we've got a lot of people that want to make a comment tonight. And so you each are going to have 3 minutes. I will let you know when you have 1 minute left. And then at 3 minutes, I'll let you know and you'll have to wrap up. If at some point you feel like you want to make more comments or you have more detailed comments, you have a statement that you're trying to read from that you'd like to submit, it didn't meet that 3 minute criteria, you are more than welcome to submit your comment as a written comment. It holds just as much weight as a spoken comment. And in a minute, I will put up on the screen the address and the email and the MyWater site for those written comments as well. So thanks for your cooperation today. We need to move on here. So the next person that is requested to make a comment is Eugene Schoon. Soon or Shun. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Eugene Shun.
Thank you. My name is Eugene Schoon.
Okay.
And I live at 4970 East Kevin in Bridgman. My comments apply to all these permits. I'm also the president of the Woodland Shores Beach Association. Woodland Shores is the community immediately north of Waco Beach. Importantly, we are also immediately south of Dunewood and the properties where the applicants propose to install these revetments. I speak for the owners in Woodland Shores, and I know I also speak for hundreds of other Bridgman area residents and the many, many, many visitors who come to the Waco Beach area. We're compelled to speak this evening in opposition to these revetments because of the damage that they are likely to cause in Woodland Shores and the city's beach, Waco. Mr. Ganem, our city manager, has already written separately on behalf of Bridgman, stating its position, its opposition to hard revetments. I'm sure you're aware of Chickiming Township's recent action objecting to the Sun's End road revetments and Lake Charter Township's recent resolution as to this issue as well. But in addition to this, our own association, which includes a dozen or more homes on the shoreline, has committed itself to alternatives to revetments of any kind of hard armaments. The local people in the community with a stake in this, with property often on the beach, in fact, over 400 individuals have signed our petition opposing these applications. So why are we speaking? Well, according to council, Ms. Skidmore, who you heard from earlier in her written submission to you, she characterized our opposition as based on generalized hysteria. Generalized hysteria. According to her own papers, it's based largely on emotion, but it's not. Representatives of the people of the state, our opposition is based on mountains of evidence, as was the opposition from each of the governmental bodies and associations that I've mentioned. It's based on experience.
2 minutes. You got 1 minute left.
Thank you. It is based on the experience of the failures and damage caused by rock revetments. I don't want to rehash all that, but my primary interest here is just to remind you all of the interference with beach access, beach use. You heard from Ms. Reagan about the sand nourishment issues and how they interfere. Listen carefully to what the applicants have said about how these will not interfere with walking, but that's not true. Look at Exhibit C. While it appears to show plenty of space to walk between the water and the boulders, well, if there's all that space, then why are the revetments being explained? Mr. Nelson explained that the waves will wash up. Well, of course. How often can you walk along Lake Michigan when there aren't waves? In fact, these rocks will make it impossible for us to use.
That's 3 minutes. If you'd wrap up, please.
I will, and thank you very much. You have our written submission as well. I want to thank you for spending your evening with us and listening carefully to the comments that we've made. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next on the list is Scott Howard. Then after Scott Howard is Michelle Helmkamp. So Scott Howard, your line is unmuted, so you can go ahead and make your comment. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thank you for listening to our public comments. This is a very important part of the process. I am an attorney. I represent the Lakefront Preservation Group and the Wildwood Homeowners Association. And I understand that you are most interested in arguments that relate to the statutory standards that you are reviewing the application under. And so we have endeavored and worked hard to coordinate our testimony around a few important legal standards that you are looking directly at. Number one, the statute Part 353 requires you to evaluate whether or not there's going to be significant damage to the public interest. And I'm not going to rehash what a lot of people are going to talk to you about, but the public interest in this beach is strong, is enormous, is important, and it's critically important to the community, as you just heard from Gene. So we ask you to weigh heavily the potential damage that these proposed revetments are going to have on that public interest and the public trust bottomlands that you are tasked with protecting for the entire public. Secondly, the statute talks about damage or harm or unreasonable depletion or degradation of the diversity, the quality, and the functions of the critical dune area. This is where all of that science really comes into play, and is really critically important for you to focus in on that science. I think the resounding amount of material that you have received so far, and you will probably receive more up until the comment period ends, all tells you that there is going to be significant scouring, significant damage to these critical dune areas from this particular revetment. And it is an essential part of your task to evaluate all of that scientific information.
You have 1 minute left.
Importantly, too, you need to hold the applicant to the standard of their burden of proof to establish with the same level of science that their claims that there's going to be no impact or no impairment to the critical dunes you need to hold them to the same standard of proof as is suggested that we all as commenters and objectors to the revetment proposals must meet. And so far we haven't heard anything of such studies or scientific information that shows there are going to be no downdrift impacts. In fact, I think the quote from the engineer was something along the lines of, a couple of times, was along the lines of, we can't predict what Michigan is going to do. The last item that I have—
Sir, that's 3 minutes, so I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
Let me just say one last thing, and that—
Okay. Oh, okay. We're going to have to go on now to Michelle Helmkamp, and then after Michelle Helmkamp, it's Donna Pugh. So Michelle Helmkamp.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Michelle Helmkamp. My husband Matt and I have our home at 9060 Lakeway Lane in Bridgman. Thank you for your time this evening. My grandparents bought 2 lots on Lake Michigan in the 1960s. When my husband and I inherited one of those lots from our family, the taxes went up tremendously, and we needed to know if the land was buildable or not. So we were given a permit by the MDEQ to build in the exact spot that we did on our lot. At that time, our home was over 200 feet from the water. Now our home is 30 feet from the wave cut. We are the one that people have been talking about several times. As we have researched what is permissible or permittable and what makes the most sense, we came to the conclusion that the best solution was a rock wall revetment, not just to get us through this particular crisis, but for the future of our home as well. We're 4th generation, we'd like to pass it on to a 5th generation. So even if this is the high water mark, it would not be wise to continue to allow our home to be 30 feet from the edge of a sand cliff. We desire to protect our home against future erosion in this way. Our neighbors have suggested that we built our home too close to the lake. What they do not acknowledge is that we built the home in the prescribed envelope. We built it as far back as we were allowed to build. Their suggestion is that we should move our home back. This is just not feasible. We would have no place to put the septic system, and we are at the end of our narrow street. Our home provides the only spot for emergency vehicles to be able to turn around. Moving our home is not a viable option. Our neighbors are also asking for a guarantee that our revetment will not harm their property. Well, that's just ridiculous. That's what we all want right now. That's what we're looking for, is the surest way to protect our property. Everyone, not just us, along the beach is in danger. As my Uncle Bill said, it's like a war zone as you walk the beach. Right now, they're worried about being able to walk the beach, and nobody can walk the beach as it is because of all the trees that are down. While they want us to risk our home over another winter and just trust Mother Nature, they're asking us to protect them.
You have 1
We're
minute.
not asking anybody to protect us. We're just asking you to not block us from protecting our home. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, looking at my list here, next person up is Donna Pugh. Donna Pugh, P-U-G-H, and after Donna is Kathy Brickley. So Donna Pugh, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Donna Pugh, I'm a resident of Wildwood. Wildwood adjoins Dunewood, and together there's a continuous beach from Waco to Cook with some of the other communities, just to give you some perspective. I'm an attorney by trade, and I serve as the chair of Wildwood's Lakeshore Management Committee. I have 2 points. One, I believe there's more than sufficient evidence of downdrift damage to the public interest in the beach. And that's extremely concerning. And as a result, I don't think the applicant has met its burden to examine alternatives such as geotubes or sandbags, especially with the water level going down. This is also consistent with the guidance of Lake Charter Township, which I know Mr. Zemont was on that call, that did conclude that they wanted to see soft materials and less of an intrusion in the protection of the lake. So we're urging Eagle to deny these petitions and instead to encourage alternative treatments such as geotube, sandbags, moving septic fields, which we are assured is possible, and or moving residences. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. All right, next up is Kathy Brickley and then Carol Mooney. Kathy Brickley, you are now unmuted, so you can go ahead and make your comment, please.
Thank you and good evening. I'm Kathy Brickley. My husband Tom and I reside at 9118 Lakeway Lane in Bridgman. We bought our 1950 cottage in 2011 for the beach. Plain and simple. We enjoy the beach. We walk a lot. This year, our walks have been truncated due to high water, winds, storms, and high waves eroding the dune, uprooting trees, crumbling stairways, breaking decks, and exposing a septic tank. We understand the protesters' desire to retain the ability to walk the shoreline. We have the exact same desire. This past year, we experienced rapid significant erosion, and that's why we're seeking the permit to shore up the dune and protect our cottage. Though some protesters say that our cottage is not threatened, this simply reflects their misunderstanding of the actual site conditions on our property. The objectors say we should just relax. They say this is just part of the cycle, but they are failing to factor global warming into the equation. The Army Corps of Engineers predicts our lake water level will continue to climb above record levels for the next couple of years, and the Climate Information Center predicts that storms and extreme weather events are increasingly likely. We simply cannot wait to do something until the water recedes, because in the interim, our septic will be exposed and will cause safety and health issues, and our cottage will be in serious jeopardy if not destroyed. The protesters say we should move our septic. Gosh, I wish it was that easy. One protester says that Nick Margaritas said that our septic could be relocated landward under Hemlock Lane. This again reflects a lack of understanding of our property. We own no property along Hemlock Lane. One protester said that we had not consulted with the health department regarding our septic system. Simply not accurate. Nick Margaritas has been consulted and is detailed in writing by our experts. It is not feasible to locate an equivalent septic system landward due to the size of our lot, the easements on our property, and the locations of the potable well, both on our lot and on our neighbor's lot.
1 minute.
As we wrote, we have found 2 septic fields at opposite ends of the lot, 30 feet from the wave cut. To remove them would require digging up the entire length of our 100-foot lot, 30 feet from the wave cut, and that would destabilize the critical dune and uproot the natural vegetation. It is not feasible to move our septic. We also have the experts' determination it is not feasible to move the cottage back because of spatial and topographical limitations. Because of unexpected delays in securing a permit, our group is now seeking, each individually, sandbags as a temporary measure. Though the protesters have been advocating this all along, now that we're doing it, they're peppering the contractors and the governmental agencies with questions. It's really difficult to understand their motivations and their lack of empathy. After
3
all,
minutes.
what they say is true. I'll wrap up. is true, that we should relax because the water will recede, then the revetment offers long-term shoreline protection with only a short period of time before it becomes invisible. Eagle encouraged listeners in the September 10th webinar to seek permits early, and we are living proof that Eagle is right on. It's taken us 10 months to get to this point. We do not have another 10 months. We implore you to look carefully at all the evidence and to grant the permit now.
Okay.
And just one final point of clarification. Pam Baumgartner had submitted a protest letter using her title as Secretary of the Dunewood Association Board. She does not speak for the board. The board has made it very clear that it has no official position regarding the revetment applications. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have to move on now. Again, I want to remind people to try to be timely because we got a lot of people who would like to comment, and we want to make sure everybody gets plenty of time before it gets too late. So thank you for watching your time. So next up is Carol Mooney. Then after Carol Mooney is Anthony Early. Carol Mooney, your line's unmuted and you can go ahead and start. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight. I truly appreciate it, and I will be brief. As I listened to many of the comments tonight, it occurred to me that our dunes would be much healthier if no homes were ever built along the lake shore. But all of us who own homes in Dunewood, and we have one on Woodland Drive, are the lucky beneficiaries of being allowed to build in the dunes. It's my opinion that some balancing must be done. And as I listen to the reading of the statutes permit consideration of private interests. Clearly, there are private interests at stake here. The argument that the rising and falling of the lake is cyclical is certainly true, but whether it will soon recede is an unknown. The length of any cycle is unknown and unknowable. And even if conditions today were similar to those in times past, we couldn't know. Conditions are not the same. With the changes in global climate, the predictability of the lake receding is far less certain than it may have been in the past. Even if the lake recedes soon, some of us may lose our homes. Just a few days ago at the North Easement, it was very clear that without the sandbags, the home immediately south of the easement could be lost this winter. That is, without the sandbags, if this winter's erosion is as serious as last. And we all know the sandbags are at best a temporary fix. Eagle says so itself. Hopefully, the sandbags will survive this winter and spring. Please allow the homeowners along the lake to protect their homes. Whatever inconvenience that may produce for the rest of us should not prevent us from supporting our friends and neighbors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, up next is Anthony Early. And then after Anthony Early, it's going to be Robert Cook. So Anthony Early, you can go ahead and unmute.
Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Tony Early, and along with my wife Sarah, we own 9278 Dunewood Drive, which is immediately adjacent to the two southern properties of the group of applicants. We fully support the granting of the revetment permits, the subject of tonight's hearing. The applications submitted to Eagle meet the requirements for permits to protect the homeowner's property, and the requests are consistent with permits that have been granted to Eagle to hundreds of homeowners along the Lake Michigan shoreline. I do want to address an issue raised by some opposed to granting the permits, who claim Lake Michigan water levels are cyclical and they'll recede again in the future, so there's no need to install a revetment. You know, while prediction of Lake Michigan water levels is fraught with uncertainty, any prediction today is more opaque than ever due to the impacts of climate change. In my professional career, I ran 3 different electric and gas utilities, one on the Atlantic Ocean, one on the Great Lakes, and one on the Pacific Ocean. So I'm well acquainted with the need for adequate shoreline protections in light of the growing effects of climate change. At the 3 different nuclear plants my companies owned, and dozens of other facilities on the water, no one could responsibly say, let's wait and see that whether lake levels go down next year. In 2016, I was privileged to be a member of the California delegation to the Paris Climate Change Accords and was on multiple panels with internationally recognized leaders on the subject. And there are a couple of takeaways from that conference that are relevant to the discussions here. First, even if greenhouse gas emissions stop tomorrow, the environmental impacts will linger for decades because of the latent impacts of most greenhouse gases. In other words, climate impacts are here to stay. Climate change impact can be seen across our whole ecosystem.
You have 1 minute left.
Temperatures which impact protective ice barriers on the Great Lakes, lake levels, precipitation, storm severity. Consequently, past observations cannot be relied upon for future predictions. While there still will be cyclicality in ocean and lake levels, the net impacts will be increasing levels and an accelerating pace of change. Finally, there's widespread agreement in Paris that countries must have aggressive climate resiliency strategies, which include an array of coastline protection strategies to avoid catastrophic climate change results. The bottom line is that in a world grappling with impacts of climate change, a response that relies on historical statistical data is totally arbitrary and capricious. And I know from personal conversations that the official policy of our state and our governor is that climate change is real and that we must deal with it responsibly.
3 minutes.
To hold the world and to ignore it makes absolutely no sense.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, moving on to our next commenter, Robert Cook. Then after Robert Cook is Ian Ram. So Robert Cook, you are now unmuted. You can go ahead, you got 3 minutes.
Sure, thank you. My name is Robert Cook, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my wife, Christine. And I do want to say that I respect and appreciate the concerns of all of the parties here, and that I know they're rooted in the love of this, the great natural resource that we have. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak. My wife and I are both part of the Lakeshore Preservation Group, and we do support this team's research and stand behind their stand against and our stand against permanent revetments. A little history, I grew up in Bridgman since the 1970s and in the area, and worked at the city's Waco Beach for 3 seasons. And so the time that I've spent here, I'm very familiar with the changing lake levels and how it affects the lakeshore. In fact, right now it's very similar to what it was back in the 1980s when I spent a lot of time on the beachfront. We have a very unique stretch of beach, and it goes on for miles. And in many parts of this state and other states surrounding the Great Lakes, this has been lost. And I believe it's my obligation and our obligation, and I say we, all of us, to protect this resource for generations to come. So it's greater than just an individual here. It's for the greater good. And in Ben's comments, he indicated Eagle's responsibility is to protect the natural resources. Now I'm kind of paraphrasing that, but I did not hear that it's their responsibility to protect vacation, weekend, or even year-round homes. Based on my personal observation, there's one home that seems to be at the greatest risk, and that's the Helmkamp home. And this is also the home that was required to be movable. Also, with Ben's comments, I think there was some question about what movable means. And I would, express that I think the intention was that it potentially could be moved, and that at some point in time that might be meant to happen. And if there is not a place to move, then I think individuals in this situation that accept the risk.
Got 1 minute left.
Lakefront, thank you. That accept the risk of building on the lakefront need to ensure they're not overbuilding, and it may require underbuilding at some point in time in order to satisfy the requirements and preserve the safety of their homes. But I appreciate your opportunity, the opportunity to speak this evening, and I wish the best for all of us as we go through this endeavor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, next up, Ian Ram, and after Ian Ram is Arthur Hahn. Ian Ram, you are unmuted. So you can go ahead. You got 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you. This is Ian Ram. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm a homeowner in Chickaning Township, just south of where these proposed revetments would be. I've chosen to speak here today because the decisions made affect all the people of Michigan and also the unique character of the state. I'll focus my comments on the public trust doctrine. Now, each of the applicants present plans that would cover existing beach area with revetment material extending potentially into the lake. The normally walkable beach will unquestionably be destroyed and replaced with untraversable rock per the applicant's submitted plans, including rock extending lakeward of the ordinary high water mark by several feet. This plan violates the public trust doctrine as decided by the Michigan Supreme Court in Glass versus Geckel, 2005. The court noted that the rights of landowners are subject to the rights of the public under the public trust doctrine. And the court specifically ruled that walking the shore of the Great Lakes is a protected right in addition to fishing and hunting. Now today, PRISM has told us that the public trust is not violated by showing in Exhibit C a cross-sectional drawing of the 2018 water levels. This is misleading because it does not account for the court's definition of the ordinary high water mark. It is important to know that the ordinary high water mark is based on their own definition that is not accepted by the courts. And moreover, the ordinary high water mark is defined differently by both EGLE and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The Michigan Supreme Court has their own definition of the ordinary high water mark as it pertains to the public trust doctrine. The court said that public use is permitted below the high water mark, which the court defined as, quote, the point on the bank or shore up to which the presence and action of the water is so continuous as to leave a distinct mark, either by erosion, destruction of terrestrial vegetation, or other easily recognized characteristic.
You have 1 minute.
This distinction in the court's definition of the ordinary high water mark indeed means that these proposed revetments would violate the public trust doctrine. Fluctuation of Great Lakes water levels was cited by the court when explaining that land, quote, not immediately and presently submerged, falls within the ambit of the public trust because the lake has not permanently receded from that point and may yet again exert its influence up to that point, end quote. Finally, the court's decision places the burden to protect the public's interest in accessing the shoreline on the state and local governments. Now, notably, these interests were safeguarded just last year when the U.S. Supreme Court declined to
That's 3 minutes.
Federal Appeals Court ruling. So given that each of these applicants shows plans to impede the public's interest by installing boulders below the ordinary high water mark as defined by the court, the state of Michigan, EGLE, Army Corps of Engineers, Berrien County, and Lake Township are compelled to reject these applications. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next up is Arthur Hahn and then Sarah Wood. So Arthur Hahn, you are unmuted.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time to have this hearing. I appreciate it. I want to endorse the last speaker because the public trust is a critical part of this equation. I'm respectful of the homeowners and their impulse and their right to protect their property. By the same token, the public trust is sacrosanct. And what we're looking at here are the 8 revetment proposals, innumerable more proposals which will follow on their heels on this treasured stretch of beach from the power plant to Waco Beach. Undoubtedly, that aggregation of revetments is going to impinge on the public trust. And the duty of EGLE is to protect that public trust. clearly what we're looking at is a balancing. And we've heard those proposals, i.e. you can have sandbags or geotubes. When I asked the expert about that, his comment was it's apples and oranges, or they're not permanent. And that's exactly correct. They're not permanent, but they will save the houses at this juncture. And it's a compromise with the rights of the homeowner and the sacrosanct interest of the public trust. If you grant one of these revetments, you're going to armor this entire stretch of beach and destroy it and destroy the public trust.
In 1 minute.
That's inconsistent with your duty, respectfully. And so I propose the compromise, protect these properties in the immediate term with geotubes and sandbags. They are not permanent. They will dissolve and the beach will restore and the public trust can be preserved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Sarah Wood is next, and after Sarah, John and Mel.
And Sarah Wood of wait, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. Just can you repeat your name and if you're representing an organization?
Ken and Sarah Wood of 9162 Hemlock Lane in Dunewood. I wasn't planning to make any comment on climate change, but I feel compelled to mention it. In the 1980s, I remember there was room only for a beach chair and with our feet in the water. So I'm assuming that there was climate change in the 1980s. Also, I don't think it popped up all of a sudden in 1992. And last I heard, there has been global warming of 0.7 degrees, not even 1 degree. So not all agree about climate change, and I don't think that is a very good reason to ruin our beaches. Unfortunately, we are the first house south of a 100-foot boulder revetment, which our neighbors plan to build. The revetments will cause severe damage to homeowners who live south of the proposed 600 feet of boulder revetments. Those who are applying for a boulder revetment permit do not seem to realize they run the risk of destroying their own beaches. Sand in front of the boulders will wash away, and according to one expert, if you put in a stone revetment, soon all you will have is a stone revetment. In other words, it is goodbye sand and goodbye beach. Since erosion damage occurs mainly to the south of revetments, in this part of Michigan anyway, we believe our property and our neighbors to the south of us will suffer catastrophic downward drift damage. Our dunes and beaches will be cut away, and our neighbors' actions to the north will put not only our septic systems, but possibly our homes in harm's way. Do our neighbors have the right to take actions that will harm us and diminish or destroy our major asset, our property? Our health is declining, and we will need to sell our property within the next year or two. We carefully planned our retirement and have been counting on the proceeds from the sale of our beautiful property to see us through our remaining years.
You have 1 minute left.
Hopefully, of our value to our children. How can we sell our property when it is being damaged by erosion caused by our neighbors' boulders revetments? All this to save septic systems. A major reason for installing boulders is protection of septic systems. This is the reason given by most of the revetment homeowners to our north and also to our south. The owners in between the Woods, the Frobergs, the Cuthberts, and Guilfoyles, for example, don't feel their septic systems are threatened, and their systems are aligned along the same geographical line as ours. The water has not breached the visible 1986 bluff line, by the way, and is now receding. Furthermore, we find it hard to believe that their septic systems cannot be moved. Our next door neighbors directly
Ma'am, that's
to our
3
north
minutes.
have not a mansion that sits on a regular sized lot. We find it hard to believe that there is no room anywhere for a septic system to be moved. And if necessary, and probably it is not necessary, we would consider offering part of our property as an alternative site for moving their septic system away from the lakeside of their property. We would much rather have their septic system on part of our property than have a boulder revetment on their beach.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We got to move on. That's over 3 minutes. Okay, got to move on to the next one. John and Mel, and then Eric Nelson is after John and Mel. John, you are unmuted. You can go ahead and do your 3 minutes.
Okay, thanks, Jim. My name is John Immel. I live at 5797 Wildwood Drive in Bridgman, and I am the president of the Wildwood Homeowners Association, the first association north of Dunewood. Collectively, we're 51 Lake Township taxpayers owning 3/5 of a mile of the Lake Michigan shoreline. It is true that our shore has taken a huge hit with all the erosion that's plagued all property owners up and down the coast, but we know that history will repeat itself and our beach will come back. Unless, of course, we allow armoring of that shore, in which case science tells us it won't ever come back as it was. I think it is very worth noting that a Wildwood homeowner who definitely needs to protect his property is listening to his neighbors and to science and installing a geotube solution this year. It seems a no-brainer on so many levels, so much more beach-friendly, so much less expensive, so much quicker it will be put in place this year, so much more neighborly. I can't see why it doesn't make sense for all those in need of shoreline protection to at least give this idea a try and to at least see what happens. As president, the Wildwood Board has formally asked me to express our opposition to all the hard armoring revetment proposals. Wildwood speaks with one unanimous voice, saying no to permanent stone revetments and yes to the alternative temporary means of protection, such as the geotube solution. The science against shoreline armoring has been made convincingly tonight, and I know I speak specifically for Wildwood owners when I say that walking the beach uninterrupted from Wildwood on the north to Waco on the south and beyond is a treasure. In fact, it is one of the main reasons most, if not all, of our homeowners purchase property here in the first place. As one of those walkers for 19 plus years now, there's no way.
1 minute left.
2 minutes?
You have 1 minute left.
I have 1 minute left. At any rate, not to mention the hundreds or thousands of tourists I've passed and what would happen to those walks if suddenly they were interrupted by the shoreline damage of stone revetments. Soon tourists right behind them looking elsewhere for those pristine beach vacations and walks and swims with the family would be looking elsewhere. These points seem more personal and economic in nature, but they're impossible to separate from the long-term damage of the stone revetments. Let's not let that happen right now tonight. The wisdom of the Lake Michigan Environment, Great Lakes and Energy Commission can say no to the certain long-term damage of our shore that armoring will cause. One last thought, if I may, and I think it's an important one. How many of the new restaurants, beer gardens, and wineries, et cetera, would actually be investing in our town and this area if it weren't for the beach? It truly is a community treasure.
Okay, that's 3 minutes.
We're all guardians of this incredible stretch of land. And while it is true that beachfront owners have a right to protect their immediate property, how much of a right do all of us have who don't live on the beach but use it every day to protect our rights as well?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next person up is Eric Nelson. Then after Eric Nelson is Chris Reagan. Eric Nelson, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah. Hi, Jim. I don't know where that was coming from because I'm the Eric Nelson with Prism that introduced the project on behalf of the applicants at 6 p.m. But I have nothing further to say at this point.
Okay. Yep. You had just mentioned anything you had to make a comment, but you probably was because you were speaking. So thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Next up, Chris Reagan. Then after Chris Reagan, Mark Graham. Chris Reagan, go ahead. You are muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Thanks. My name is Chris Reagan. For the last 19 years, I've been at 9182 Hillcrest Drive in Dunewood. In the September 15th Lake Charter Township Board meeting discussing the Dunewood applicant's special exemption to build in a critical dune, one applicant who spoke said the following: "We have 4 children and would like to pass on our property to them at one point. We would be bad parents if we passed on to them something that is 33 feet from the sand dune cliff." Ironically, the applicant's next door neighbor to the north installed a revetment in 1998, and today the daughter of that neighbor is seeking not to repair, but to build yet another revetment at significant cost. Is this the legacy that is suggested being passed on to the next generation? The continual maintenance and expense of failing structures? Dr. Guy Meadows, founding director of the Great Lakes Research Center at Michigan Tech, stated in his testimony to the Michigan House Natural Resources and Outdoor Recreation Committee on February 25th, "People have to recognize that the beach is constantly changing and there is this erosion reality. And just because you drew lines around it doesn't mean your property is going to still be there for the grandkids to inherit." He goes on to say that unless we change our approach, this will continue until the cost of the revetments and the shore protection measures exceed the property values of the houses. Eagle's mandate is to protect the environment and uphold the public trust, but for the fiscal year ending September 30th, the department will have permitted more than 2,500 projects compared to 730 in 2019, according to Jared Sanders, Assistant Director for Eagle's Water Resource Division. If we don't turn this trend around, we may soon pass a point of no return. As Professors Richard Norton and Guy Meadows wrote in a recent letter to Sanders, given the increased storminess, the increased pressures of shoreline development, the record high water levels we are now experiencing, as well as the likelihood that those water levels will remain above the long-term average for the foreseeable future, the time has come to revisit a host of difficult but unavoidable questions.
You have 1 minute left.
The science is well documented. It's even documented on Eagle's website. Boulder revetments are a lose-lose-lose proposition. They fail. They require continued investment and maintenance. They starve the beach of sand and its ability to rebuild, but most of all, they rob the public of their right to walk a sandy beach. One need only look up the coast to Stevensville and Shoreham. The only winners in this game are those who repeatedly build the structures and are designed to fail. The only solution is to find a way to move structures, septic systems, or homes. Bob Gazon, a revetment contractor and founder of White Lake Dock and Dredge, was quoted earlier this year by saying, "When the phone rings, my first comment, my advice is to do nothing except move your home back. It's cheaper and it's better for the environment to move your home back." I urge you to deny these applications for revetments and demand a better solution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next up is Mark Graham. Then after Mark Graham is Ellen Walsh.
Jim, I'm not seeing a Mark Graham listed in the attendee list.
Okay, thanks, Joel. So Mark Graham is not in attendance. Ellen Walsh. Okay, Ellen Walsh, you are unmuted, so you can go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, I am Ellen Walsh, and I live in Dunewood at 9326 Dunewood Drive, and I support the written submission by the Lakefront Preservation Group. Lakefront Preservation Group has worked diligently to come up with environmentally sound alternatives to boulder revetments. Because 6 of our 8 neighbors cite threats to their septic systems as their reasons for armoring the shoreline, we have consistently advocated for moving their septic systems out of harm's way. We have asked our neighbors to look at their lots holistically to assess how they might work together to move their systems. As pointed out by 2 environmental health department managers, when adjacent neighbors display a willingness to work together and cooperate with easement agreements, many options open up. Today's stacking ring septic systems offer flexible design options to meet the needs of even the most challenging landscape situations. These applications do not provide the specific reports by Merit Engineering or the County Health Department, nor do they reveal how the particular assessments were conducted. Without these reports, my questions are, did the applicants instruct their consultants to assess their sites strictly within each parcel's lot lines and setbacks, essentially with blinders on? Or were they instructed to consider adjoining properties, essentially taking the blinders off to allow for creative out-of-the-box thinking to site new systems? Specifically, have the Brickleys contacted their neighbors to the south, the Woods and the Frobergs, who have each documented with Lake Charter Township and Eagle that they are willing to cooperate with the Brickleys in endeavors to move their septic landward? Have the applicants along Lakeway Lane worked with their neighbors to the east of Lakeway to assess utilizing space under Lakeway Lane for new septic systems? Have the Allens contacted the Kaisers, the neighbors immediately to their south, to open a discussion about working together on a new septic location? We know that these applications work diligently together to design their 800-foot boulder wall. Isn't it reasonable to expect them to make an equally coordinated effort to relocate their septics?
You have 1 minute left.
And does Eagle have adequate information on file to determine if these septics can be moved? The Eagle application for the special exception requires both a survey and a site plan. To date, none of the Dunewood online applications include an official survey. They provide site plans and cross-section drawings, which are only partial views of each lot, failing to show the areas behind and landward of these homes, beside and landward of these homes that would need to be specifically and critically assessed for septic moves. Will Eagle require these applicants to adhere to the state's requirement that applications include a survey? Eagle personnel have publicly stated that relocating septic systems is a preferred alternative to building rock revetments. Audrey Kirk, District Supervisor of Eagle's Grand Rapids District, said, "I think the preference for the state is always to move structures if you can. The sure
3 minutes, please.
To protect infrastructure is to move it away from the edge." Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, folks. Well, I've made it through my list of people who have indicated ahead of time that they wanted to make a comment. So now what we're going to do is if you would like to make a comment, and you have not made a comment already. So if you have not commented yet and you'd like to make a comment, you can click the raise hand icon and I will go through and call your name and you can make your comment. If you're on the phone and you'd like to make a comment, you can hit *9 and that will allow us to unmute your line. You had to hit *9 and we'll call on you that way. So I want to remind you, we have 3 minutes each. And so please adhere to that 3-minute guideline. I'll give you a minute warning and then I'll also tell you when your 3 minutes up, and please wrap up when I say 3 minutes. Okay, so I'm looking at my list of raised hands here, Joel, and you can see Ben Cuthbert is the first person I have with hand raised. So Ben, we've unmuted your mic, so you can go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening. My name is Ben Cuthbert, and my family owns property at 5111 Dunewood Lane in Bridgman, Michigan. Our home is a lakeshore property. It's actually located between the two sections of revetments being proposed in Dunewood. So 6 of those to our north and 2 to our south. So we are well aware of the high lake levels, and we have witnessed and experienced the same erosion they have. And we truly sympathize with our neighbors' concerns. But we are also deeply concerned about the long-term negative impact these permanent structures would have not only on our own property, but as has been stated many times before, on the treasured public trust. I'd like to speak briefly this evening to clarify what we are talking about with regard to our proposal of an alternative protection measure called geotubes, maybe more broadly, geotextile tubes as an alternative to revetments. So that everyone is aware, geotextile tubes are very large, heavy-duty, sand-filled tubes. They're not your grandmother's sandbag. They're stacked in layers along the base of the dune to provide erosion protection, and these create a synthetic barrier along the shorelines and beaches, acting as a first line of defense against the high water. Contrary to earlier comments, these geotextile tubes are made of fabric designed to withstand Michigan's harsh climate variations, and their strength makes them well suited to endure Lake Michigan storms. They can vary in length and width, and they offer customization on an owner's site. And sand can actually be used and sourced from the
1 minute left
beach at the very site they will protect. These things being said, Isn't it important that given the expert opinion of the damage that permanent armoring will cause to shorelines and neighboring properties, especially in high waters, that these alternatives should be considered? We are encouraged that our neighbors, those pursuing revetments, have actually pursued geotextile tubes in recent weeks, and that installation projects of those tubes are currently underway in Dunewood, and we applaud these neighbors for installing those tubes according to Eagle guidelines. And it's our sincere hope that these efforts will preserve and protect their property through the storm season ahead.
3
and
minutes.
It's our additional hope that it will convince them to abandon their pursuit of boulder revetments. Thank you for listening. We urge you to deny these applications and instead demand them to utilize these effective alternatives. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next person with their hand raised is Kevin McAllister. Kevin McAllister, you are unmuted.
Thank you, Jim. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You got 3 minutes.
Jim, I'm participating from Sag Harbor, Long Island. I was asked to review the application as part of my work as president of Defend H2O. It's a nonprofit organization. I am not being compensated for this. The extent of my evaluation looked at aerial photos and your regulations and drawing upon over 3 decades of professional experience in coastal zone management, both from South Florida as well as Long Island. A big focus on beach stability of my work and my organization's work. The factors affecting this, of course, and you've heard it from other speakers, the water level, wave energy, supply of sand, and then of course the structures that could go in. Water level has varied. There's uncertainty there, but clearly the applicant has showed erosion rates in the last several years. The supply of sand is relying on the nearshore sandbars, littoral drift up and down the coast with net flow sounds north to south through this area. And then the dunes themselves. These are sand reservoirs. These are a critical component to the system. So under wave attack, they are intended to provide sand source so we have viable beaches. The impacts of structures, including these stone revetments, over time, particularly regardless of lake level, inevitably storm energy will interact with this structure. You have reflective energy, turbulence, the erosion will occur in front of the structure. And because of the change in beach profile and water depths, accretion is rare in these instances to come back. Ultimately, as this beach narrows, now you are affecting downdrift beaches because that supply of sand is affected. Looking at the
1 minute left.
1 minute. Looking at the regulations, part 353, I submit that the impact or the degradation of critical dune areas certainly does not meet the standard of the quality of these dune areas as well as functionality, as I described the beach dune system. I urge Eagle to decline the permit. And lastly, I'd throw caution with geotextiles. I worked extensively with them in permitting. They are being installed up and down the East Coast, including Long Island. They're being billed as a temporary solution. They are not temporary. Oftentimes they become permanent. And they are every bit shoreline hardening, including in New York State's regulations and other states. So the impacts associated with geotextiles will be hard.
3 minutes, sir.
The public trust will be lost.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Next person up is Matt Helmkamp. Matt Helmkamp, your line's unmuted.
Okay, thank you. You can hear me?
Yes, we can. You have 3 minutes.
All right. I'm at 9060 Lakeway Lane. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. Waves have come within 40 feet of my home this summer, And we built our home with the septic on the reverse side in order to protect, and our home actually is right in line with how homes were used to be built. They were built with the septic on the lakeward side, and we did it the opposite. And so we're not really out any further than anybody else there. The Army Corps of Engineers site that I check kind of on a daily basis lately is saying that the water is the exact same as it was last year. And at that height, we lost at least 40 to 50 feet of beach in Fore Dune from the fall and winter storms. If that same thing happens this year, I would lose my home. And I can't just wait and hope the cycle reverses. I need to do something now, and that's what we're proposing to do with a revetment. Last January, I joined a group of neighbors to find the best solution for the problem we all share. In order to save our homes, we researched several methods of shore protection, and it seemed to us and to the professional experts we employed that an angled rock revetment was the best solution for our problem and the least impactful to the beach we all love and enjoy. And I know John Fogelberg, kind of questioned the motives of the people, that they just want to take our money. But that's kind of an unfair statement about their character. We hired them because of their professionalism and their knowledge about these things, and we feel like they've given us very good advice. We didn't.
You have 1 minute left.
We didn't take the research lightly. In fact, sometimes it was painstakingly slow as we tried to reach consensus at each step. We interviewed several contractors and coastal engineers. We went on site visits and methodically ruled out every other option. And I'm proud of the group that we've been a part of and feel like we've come up with a reasonable solution. The Cobreaks rock revetment right to my north has worked perfectly during this time. And it's a great example to us. It did not bother anybody's walk or anybody's sight because it was covered with sand for 20 years. And that's what we want to copy. So I thank you for listening to me tonight, and I hope that you'll not delay any longer the permits that we need to protect our private property. Cook Nuclear Plant has a steel wall. Waco Beach has a cement groin.
It's 3 minutes, sir.
And Warren Dunes has steel walls protecting their snack shed. I think we should be able to do the same thing as a private owner.
Okay, 3 minutes. Thank you. Okay, next person up is Marion Maxey. You're unmuted. You can go ahead and restate your name, please, for me.
This is Marion Maxey. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Oh, great. Thank you. I live at 9455 Big Beach Trail in Bridgman, Michigan, and I want to thank Eagle for their extraordinary generosity in spending your evening with us tonight. I also want to thank the 8 properties who have applied for the revetments, as they brought forward such important issues that Eagle is bound by duty and law to protect. I'm grateful that the 8 properties are currently installing sandbags as a temporary measure. It seems to me that Eric Nelson has a conflict of interest in his presentation, but more importantly, he discusses and admits that these revetments are going to, in the short term, protect these properties. But his understanding of the long-term effect of these on endangering the public trust is absent. In short term, they may protect these individuals or may not have problems with their property. They don't now. We don't know if they will in the future. Sandbags, geotubes, they're a perfect alternative. But in the long term, the responsibility of Eagle and all of you who have dedicated your lives to protect our environment, the public environment, the public trust. And we know, no matter how much Eric Nelson says, these revetments will not affect the ability to walk the lake, Look at every other area along Lake Michigan, and the sand will eventually disappear, and we will not be able to walk the lakefront. This will impact Waco Beach. This is public beach. This will impact Livingston Beach. This is public beach. This will impact the financial growth of Bridgman, a blue ribbon community. It's your duty.
You have 1 minute
Juan
left.
Yanam has also identified the city of Bridgman is against these special exemptions. I urge you, Eagle, you are dedicated to preserve the environment. This is your chance to set Eagle on the right track and protect the public interest, not the private individual citizen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We just got another person with their hand up. Just want to let people know, if you have not made a comment yet and you would like to make a comment still, you can click the raise hand icon, or if you're on the phone, hit *9. That's if you have not made a comment yet. Laura Rozomalski, sorry. You're unmuted, so you can go ahead.
Yep. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Excellent. Yep, I'm speaking today on behalf of the Lakefront Preservation Group. I'm a water resources engineer that was asked to look at the proposed design and kind of give my comments on it. So that's what I'm here to do. So from my, I guess, professional opinion, from that stance as a water resources engineer who specializes in fluvial geomorphology, which is, the science of how water interacts with the earth. I would say, the installation of the proposed revetment is potentially a more extreme solution to the current erosion problems we're having, without trying something, like a geotube. That's more of a less permanent mitigation technique, because these revetments disrupt the natural sediment transport along the shoreline and cause significant downdrift erosion. They should be more of a last resort option and probably not the first stabilization technique that is looked at to help solve the problem here. And I'd say that's especially the case in this, specific site where the beach is so pristine and undeveloped, not really impacted by harbors or piers or other seawalls and man-made structures. There's currently a really nice sand shelf in place that could potentially be significantly degraded by the installation of a revetment, or even immediately destroyed with the excavation that would be necessary to install the revetment. And there's not really anything that I saw in the design that would help to prevent that scour and the sedimentation that was mentioned. So most likely, that would cause an effect to the properties that are downdrift of the revetment that's installed. So what else was I going to say? Just that research has shown that, beach nourishment is decreased by the installation of a revetment.
You have 1 minute
It's
left.
just sort of the physical process in place is that instead of the water moving down the coastline being rich in sediment, sort of a sediment-laden flow, the water column becomes starved with sediment and then has that increased potential to erode the shoreline. And that's why you see the increased erosion rate downdrift of the revetment. So just sort of in summary, I would just encourage the use, the further exploration of geotubes being used as a potential to solve the immediate threats being posed by erosion, and just that additional time be given to study the site in more detail and fully understand the impact of a more permanent structure. Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, next up, Mary Kay Steele. Mary Kay Steele. We gotta mute your line here. I think we might have lost you. Joel, did you see Mary Kay Steele? Did she? Her hand was up. I don't know if you.
Yeah, she had to be promoted to a panelist because she's using an old version of Zoom. So she is unmuted and able to talk right now.
Okay, so Mary Kay Steele, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
My family has been on this stretch of beach since 1932.
I'm sorry, Mary Kay, still, we can't hear you, so you probably need to either talk louder into your microphone or turn it up.
Okay, how's this?
Yes, just speak loudly, please.
Okay. My family has been on this stretch of beach since 1932. We've been through 2 cycles plus this one, so 3 cycles of beach. And I have to say how thrilled I have been in the last, I don't know, month and a half, 2 months, to see those sandbars coming in and building our beaches. It is a wonderful testimony to how this beach and this lakeshore can repair itself when it is allowed to. The trees down that have been referred to by some of the homeowners are a direct result of the riprap that was installed in the 1980s. If you walk the beach up to Wildwood, through Wildwood, you will see how the lakeshore is cut in on the south side of that riprap. Wildwood had no beach this summer. But if you get north of that, of Wildwood, into Livingston Hills, you will see the beach opening up. And just on Tuesday, I was down at the foot of the stairs in Wildwood, and that sandbar is coming in, and it's moving south down the beach. I believe that with climate change, without climate change, there will be some challenges. But hardening the shoreline is not the solution. It will exacerbate the problem. And when it is time
You have 1 minute left.
to repair, it will be unable to, because that natural cycle of the sandbars coming in will be obstructed. Geotubes is an equally effective way, not apples and oranges, except temporary, permanent, not apples and oranges. It will do the same job, but when the job is done, it'll simply be cut open to replenish the beach. So an upsourced sand geotube is a much more responsible, respectful, and environmentally sound solution. So I implore Eagle, do the responsible, respectful, and environmentally responsible.
Okay, that's 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, folks, we have reached the end of the list of people who wanted to comment. So we have gone through our list here, as well as the hands raised of people who wanted to comment, got a chance to comment. So in the interest of time, I'm going to bring Ben back up. So Ben and Kyle, I know you guys are both still listening in. So there's Kyle. Okay, there's Ben. Good. So yeah, so we need to wrap this hearing up. We still had well over 100 people on, so that's great to see so many people have had interest and make so many comments. So Ben, I know to close this up, you have to read the closing statement.
Sure. Yep. This is still part of the official hearing, and so what I need to say is thank you, and I'm thankful for that. All of you folks thanked us. But anyway, thank you for your comments and your cooperation. We appreciate your interest in the proposed projects and that you took the time to be with us here tonight. As we indicated at the beginning of the hearing, you can submit additional written comments to us through October 17th. Following the close of that public comment period, we'll consider all of those comments that we've received and work towards making a decision on each of these 8 individual applications. Just to remind those that may still want to submit a comment, yeah, there. Thank you, Jim, for showing my email. And then I think some of our other technical assistance people are going to be able to send out an email to all those who had registered for this probably tomorrow that will give you links to the places where, if you're unfamiliar and it's sometimes difficult to go directly into My Waters, but honestly, that's probably the best way to do it. If you do make comments on the public hearing through that public hearing portal, then at the time that those are all, I can make one PDF document of all those comments that then can be kind of re-uploaded, and Mark Schieber or anybody else tell me if I'm saying this wrong, but that PDF document that can then be made visible to everybody. It doesn't, then you don't have to do a Freedom of Information Act request or anything like that. So I got a little off script, but I just want to make sure that people do know that that either of those methods is good, and My Waters may actually be simpler for me to do the managing of the documents. So, and you can again also do it through US mail. So the hearing is, the official portion of the hearing is now closed. Thank you again. And I guess, well, Kyle, do you want to be able to say anything?
No, I just want to thank everybody for joining in and for being patient. I know it was a large group and took a little while to get through all the comments, but thank you everybody for signing on and participating tonight. It's appreciated.
Yeah, thank you both, Kyle and Ben, for listening in. And I got Ben's contact information up there. Thank you all for spending your evening with us. I know we had a lot of people on and a lot of comments to get through, and I appreciate all your being courteous and leaving your comments. I showed you the written comments where you can send those. A couple people did ask if we're recording the session, and yes, we are recording it, and we'll make that available. It will be up on the Eagles YouTube channel. Probably in that follow-up email, we'll even direct you to a link to where you can be able to find that email that Ben was referring to. So I want to thank you all for joining us tonight, and have a great rest of your evening. Thank you.